Hello kittens, welcome back. This is Seb the Cat. So for the last week we've been working on a new multiplayer game. It's called Split Races, and the whole idea is that it's a split screen game on mobile. Now normally that's going to be quite difficult to do, so we're going to have to take a few shortcuts in terms of visuals. They need to be relatively simple, and we've only allowed 3 buttons per player. So with our oversimplified control scheme, we've also had to make a few tweaks to the gameplay to make the game fun, despite having just 3 buttons. So let's go over to our Godot editor and run the game as it is, and get an idea of where we're at the moment. Okay, let me just see if the sound is enabled for you guys. Doesn't seem to be. Cool, alright, so let's have a quick look at how the game looks so far, with a bit of sound as well. So I've started working on the music and actually remixing it in Logic, but for now we're just going to go with the MIDI version. I've added a nice little flicker on these stars, which occurs randomly, and just this morning I added a little effect where when you pick up the stars they blink. So the aim of the game is to collect the majority of stars before the other player. So I'm going to start zooming around as player number 2 on your right here. And so I've implemented a number of different weapons. I think there are 3 different weapons at the moment. There is first of all the missile. So the missile can bounce around a little bit unless it hits another player, or once it bounces 3 times then it explodes. So if I shoot the player immediately, they're going to drop a star, and you can't pick it up immediately. You can see that it's sort of invincible for a while, but then the other player can pick it up if they want to, or you can steal it off them if you want. So that's the missile. I'll show you how the bouncing works. So if you power up and you bounce it against a wall, it will sort of just bounce in that fashion. The second weapon is an ice weapon. So this is sort of like an area control sort of weapon. If you power it up less than half, if you power it up more than half, it will shoot ahead of itself, and it will freeze the player, any player that gets caught in this aura, right? So then if you fire it behind you, if you tap, it'll fire behind you as a sort of like, if someone's chasing you, you can fire it behind you. A little bit like a TNT box in Crash Team Racing, or a banana in Mario Kart. So sort of that style, right? You drop it behind you if someone's chasing you, and as you can see, like, the aura will trigger not just on players but on the environment, so you can use it to close off corridors if you need to. And you can see there's a slight shadow effect for when the auras are interacting with stars and things. The third weapon is the Ninja Star. So the Ninja Star is relatively weak. If I just tap it, it's just going to send a single one, and it just disorientates the player. But the cool thing about Ninja Stars is that you can power them up and use them as a defensive weapon. Any projectile coming your way will be destroyed by the Ninja Stars, so you can sort of treat that like a shield. In addition, even though it's rather weak, it's really easy to aim. You don't even need to aim at all. You just, because it goes in all directions, you can use it to disorientate your opponent. Right? We've got a little boost pad which allows you to boost around the level to varying degrees. And I use that to sort of encourage certain lanes in the level design, right? So I want to push people in a certain direction, and you can actually go against the grain if you're careful, but the thing is you have to be quite careful to get around those boost pads. So yeah, I think the lighting effect is making a big difference, and also the visual feedback when you pick up the stars makes it a little I guess gives you that dopamine rush, because that's the goal of the game, is to pick up the stars, and so I think it makes sense to have those sort of blinking in that fashion. There's also a small little aura around the player. What I'd like to do is separate red and blue, and then I don't want the players to be really strong one color or the other, but I think a really delicate glow around them is going to just suggest that one player is red and one player is blue. But I think the high contrast white is actually better. Like, I don't want to make the players themselves red, because I think that you need to be able to see that sprite from a distance. So we've also zoomed out the camera a little bit. You may have noticed since last week. And yeah, okay. So my goal for today is actually to implement a new feature in the control scheme. So it's okay when you're playing on the keyboard and you want to shoot someone, because you've sort of got three keys available to you, right? Sort of, if you think WASD, you're going to have your index finger on the left key, you're going to have your ring finger on the right key, and you're going to have your middle finger on the shoot key. So it's quite easy to just power up and aim your weapon, right? As you can see, I have no trouble picking up weapons and holding the shoot key and still continuing to aim, right? However, on a touch device, it doesn't quite work that way. Most people will be playing this with just one finger for shooting. Well, with two fingers each, right? Maybe two thumbs. And so when you decide to shoot, you essentially give up your ability to aim or to turn, and I don't like how that feels. So what I'm going to implement today is a drag and shoot system. So if you drag and then you move up, it's going to aim to the left. If you click shoot and then hold drag down, it'll aim to the right. So once you push shoot, I want you to still be able to aim without using your other fingers. So that's the feature I want to do today. But quickly, I think it might be good to just create those different colors on the players so that we can distinguish player 1 from player 2. And that will be nice and easy to start off. So I'm going to jump into my player script, and if we jump into our player scene as well, so we've got our light here, and if we look at our light in the inspector, we can see that the light just has a color, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make the default color white. And let's jump over to VS Studio, because it's a little nicer when working with a lot of code. So we've got all these colors here set as constants. So I'm just going to create a couple of new constants, and I'm going to call this color P1, and that's going to be equal to a color with 1.0, which is 100% red, 0% blue, and 0% green, and full opacity, right? So that's what those 4 numbers represent. And then for player 2, I'm going to do exactly the same thing, except I'm going to switch that red for blue. Fantastic. So we now have this constant color that we can reference other places in our code. Here you can see we get all of our, whenever you see onReady, essentially, well, usually that will be getting a reference to a node in the tree. So if you look here, this is our player tree, and the player inside has a little branch called light, and that's a light node. So what we want to do is when the node's ready, essentially once we've loaded all of those little branches, that's when we're ready. So then we can get a $, which is just a shorthand for accessing the tree. So we get light out of the tree and we store it there so we have a reference to it later. Fantastic. Now let's just update our init function. So whenever we initialize a player, we just want to say that the light.color is equal to, in fact what we'll do is we'll match the player number, and on 1 we'll set the light color to color P1, and we'll do an underscore. So if it's not 1, I'm going to assume it's going to be 2, but who knows. And so that is now going to assign our player colors at the beginning of every round. And hopefully we should see a slight variation in the lighting depending on the player. So that's, nope, something went wrong. Invalid set index color, okay. Oh, I see. Okay, so because that's right. We might need to do this in the ready function. So init is actually called before the node is ready. So we just need to move this down into the ready function. So init is going to be called before the node sort of gets built, right? So before our player gets built, we assign these values, and then the node is going to get built behind the scenes by the game engine, and it's going to call ready when it's ready. And so we're not going to be able to access the light until the whole node is built, so we've got to put it there. Alright, hopefully that should work. Cool, alright, so we've now got a little blue color. It feels a bit more green, I think, because it's interacting with the yellow of the stars, but I'm sort of happy with that, I guess. And then player 1 obviously is red. And so I think this tile map is maybe not quite what I want here. I've inverted the colors to give it this like white effect, but the background is still coming through as pure black, and I think that's interacting in a weird way with the lighting system. So there is actually a way to update that. And